Project for today is going to be this old Homelite chainsaw. I'm not even sure the model yet. I haven't even really looked at it. It looks like it's a Homelite Zip Saw, but it doesn't turn over. The recoil is not working, but even when it does catch, I can't get it to turn over. I'm kind of hoping that the clutch is just stuck and the chain is stuck. Sometimes that'll be the case, so we'll pop this off and see if we can free it up that way. Otherwise we might have to soak down the cylinder. The spark plug's under this cover here. Here's the model tag, and I gotta clean that off a little bit, but that says Homelite Zip Chainsaw. And that's just got the points gap and the spark plug and all that kind of stuff on there. So I'll get you set up and we'll get started. First thing, we'll try to get it to turn over. Everything else didn't look too terrible on it. The gas tank was surprisingly clean. Actually, it's mostly just oil in there. The gas has evaporated, but a lot of times these are super corroded. So I was happy to see that. I'll get you set up and we'll get started. So take this clutch cover off, and hopefully we can get it to spin off the clutch on this side. The way the bar looked, that chain might be stuck. I can't spin it by hand, but everything's kind of gooey on this thing. I don't really want to spend the time cleaning it all up though, unless I know that it'll run, but it'd still make a neat display piece or something. Let's see if I could turn it off this bolt here. There it turns, but it turns kind of hard. Take this cover off here and pull the spark plug on it. It actually felt like a little bit of compression pumped there when I was turning it. I had one of these in the past. It was a red one. I'm not sure what that means for the year on them, but it was missing this cover and the spark plug wire was bare right here. So when I tested it out and I turned my hand, it shocked me on the spark plug. That's when I learned why they put that cover on there. That's really stuck on there. Maybe that's why that other one was missing the end. It was just all corroded. I think I still got the... Yeah, I might have to run some sandpaper in there or something to clean that spark plug wire up. I'm hoping the spark plug's good because I'm not going to have one like that. But it looks like they put the spark plug end is on there backwards. It's probably another reason it was stuck. It doesn't look too bad. It's not rusty or anything. Let's see if I can thread this end off of here. I should have a different one. Oh geez, that's why it was threaded on that way, because the spark plug was broke off. You can see the old piece in there. That's a pretty unique one though. It's HO-8A Champion. I could look that up and see if I could cross it, I guess, with anything that I might have, but I might just try a different end and thread on there. I'm gonna spray some lube down in the spark plug hole. And we'll try turning it over again. Yeah, it already feels better. Still a little bit stiff though. So we got to turn over. I'll pull this bar and chain off because I think the clutch is kind of stuck. It seems like it's wanting to turn the chain all the time. Yeah, it must be. I don't think these turn the chain all the time. It should be an actual clutch in here. Although that washer is tight to there, but maybe once we get it running, it'll break loose. So I couldn't find a plug that would cross-reference, and the threads here are so short that I don't really know if I can get anything to hook on there. So I found a J19LM Champion is fairly close in dimensions anyway. So the length of the threads and stuff, it's not going to hit the piston or anything. And it looks like it's close to the same plug. We'll see if it'll run with that, if we can get it running. But the first thing I just wanted to check was to see if it had any spark. But the recoil is not catching. So I'm going to grab a drill and we'll put it on the clutch over here and spin it over and see if we have any spark. So I got the drill set up, we'll spin it over and see if we have any spark. It looks like we got nothing. This end was pretty corroded in that line though, or that spark plug boot. Either way, we don't have spark though. And usually even when they're corroded like that, you can spin the plug in them and get it to wear off enough of that corrosion. I'm getting some of it on the plug there. I'll try it one more time. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything, but this does have a points ignition, so I'm guessing the points are dirty. And we gotta pull that recoil off anyway, so we'll see if we could pull that off without pulling this whole handlebar off. I'm not sure if we can get that recoil out of there. It's just a few flathead screws. But boy, are those tight. Oh, that one came loose. I might have to take this whole plate off, but I'll see if we can get the recoil off first. And that handlebar is in the way for... Yeah, those are really tight. Get the impact driver and get those out of there. I think I need to take these smaller screws out too to get this whole ring off of here, because we're gonna, I think the points are under the flywheel, so we're gonna have to take the flywheel off. So I got the impact driver here. I had this on the previous video. We used this first to get some Phillips screws out, but if you didn't see that one, you don't know what this is. It's basically you hit the backside and it'll spin as you hit it, so you don't end up stripping the flathead part out. I'll put that like that. And then it just spun it loose. I got 2 out of the 3, but this one I can't really get this into because of this handlebar in the way. I guess I could try it at an angle like that. Yeah, it started to tear the edge of it. I guess we'll take this handlebar off. Looks like it's like 4 bolts. Got 2 right there and then a couple underneath. I think these ones are, yeah, there must be 1/2 inch. And just, I don't know, I thought maybe I could just rotate the thing forward, but looks like a bunch of rubber jammed in there. It's kind of all gooey and stuck to it. Looks like an old inner tube actually. There was probably a rubber mount in there that got bad or something and they just jammed a rubber inner tube in there. You can see it's all kind of gooey and rotten. But this isn't going to be something we're going to be using all that much. It's just kind of for show once we get it going. So hopefully this will come loose now. There, it's spun loose. Those impact drivers can be a lifesaver. So we got that off. I'm not sure why this wasn't catching. Hopefully this ring isn't worn out. This ring in here can get worn where they don't grab. It does feel worn, but yeah, that's pretty bad. It doesn't catch at all. I think I can maybe take these off and flip them around because it looks like somebody might have already done that. But it might give us some more of a chance because when you pull those, you can kind of see that those move off to the side. So we'd have that end and that end moving out, so these ends technically should not actually be used. So I could take this off and then flip them over maybe. But I think this part is our problem, being that it's worn in. You can feel the groove in it. But it's kind of oily feeling too. So that might be making them slip worse. Because I could get it to catch a couple times at first, but it wouldn't spin over, so. Yeah, it just wants to slide. So we'll try flipping those over once I get everything else apart. I think I might just see if I could take this whole cover off. There's some awful little screws though. This is the air cleaner here. Not sure how that. Well, it looks like there might be a little screw down in there. There should have been 2, it looks like, but there's only 1. And that pulls off of there. That air cleaner actually still looks pretty good. The end doesn't look too clean, but the actual filter looks pretty clean. I'm not sure how this whole tank comes off. I guess for now I'll just take this ring off and see if we can take the flywheel off that way. I don't want to take more apart than I have to, but somebody really tighten these screws down, but I suppose these things rattle a lot, so stuff would come loose if you didn't tighten them pretty good. That one wasn't too tight. Get that off of there. So it does look like there's room for the flywheel to come off. So I'll have to take that nut off of the center there. Must be a 5/8. Here you can get a little better view. That's where the recoil grabs, and it's pretty worn. It's a combination of this being worn and those the paws on the recoil there. So I'm gonna have to, it looks like I can use some kind of puller with these 3 screws here. I was thinking I would have to get behind it and pry up. So I'll grab something we can put on there for a puller. See if we can get that flywheel off of there. Must be, the coil and everything must be underneath there, because I don't see a external coil on the outside of the flywheel or anything. So I got a puller set up on here. I'm going to use the small impact just because there's not a good way to hold this flywheel. You really shouldn't use an impact on this stuff, but being it's a littler one, it shouldn't hurt too bad. There, it popped. That wasn't on there too tight. Usually these chainsaws aren't the tightest to pop the flywheel off. At least they shouldn't be unless somebody's rammed the nut down. We got that. We got a magnet inside the flywheel there for the coil in here, which actually doesn't look too bad under here. Got a little corrosion and stuff, but nothing terrible. We'll pull this little retainer off, which covers our points. Oh, gasket. Yeah, the points are super rusted. You can see them right there. They're stuck together. Oh, there they moved with prying it with the screwdriver. Well, I'll get a piece of emery cloth and I'll clean those up, and then we should end up having spark after that, I hope. I'll just slide a piece of, let the points clamp that, and then go back and forth with it. So it says on that little cover to set the points gap at 15 thousandths. I've got it where I think they're open all the way. We're a little bit tight, I think. Yeah, so I'll open that up a little bit. There we go. That should be 15 thousandths. I'll just loosely put the flywheel back on there for now in case we have to pull it back off. Now I'll wipe out in the magnet area here. And I'll put this points cover back on just in case we did get it, then I won't have to. For some reason I never seem to get it the first time. I have to clean the points just a little bit more and then I end up getting it, but this time I tried to be extra thorough. I'm just going to hand tighten this because I don't want to have to use the puller again to get that flywheel off. And we'll spin it over with the drill again and see if we get some spark. Alright, we'll spin it over. Yeah, good spark now. So now I can tighten down that flywheel again. Then we'll have to monkey with that recoil so we can see if we can try to fire it off of just dumping some gas down in there. So I just made a stupid mistake here. This starter cup has these notches in it that correspond with the flywheel, and I set it on there before and I didn't line those up apparently, so then it was sitting up with a gap like that. So when I went to tighten it down, it broke the center out of that thing. So now I'm gonna have to figure out if I can put like a big washer in there and maybe it'll hold that down, hopefully. Yeah, I should have been paying more attention on that one. I didn't realize it fit into those grooves like that. Well, I'll see if I can figure out something we can make work for that. So I found a big washer that fit down in there. It's kind of a rusty old thing, but it was the only thing that would fit. Then I got the lock washer in there. The only thing that didn't fit was there was like an aluminum spacer washer in there. So hopefully that'll hold and not break the rest of the way. And then I'm going to take this recoil apart and we'll see if we can flip these things and solve the recoil problem, I'm hoping. I'm just going to pop this snap ring off. There's a spring under that, so I was being careful I didn't lose that. And then this should come up and off of here. I did spray some lube down in there, which I thought I could flip these, but I might have to take them completely off to be able to flip them. So taking it off of here didn't really help us too much. So I'll do some monkeying with it and I'll bring you back. The furnace is running right now anyway, so. So you can push down on this spring here and there's like a little keeper in there you can pull out. It's not the easiest thing to do. You got that out of there. And then that spring comes off. And these are actually on a square or a rectangle key, or keyed in there that way, so you can flip it over like that. And I can put it back on. I already flipped the other side. This side to show you how I was doing that. It clips back in there like that. And it sits back in there. That should throw it farther out, I'm hoping, so that'll solve our problem. I'll get this thrown back together and then we'll test it out, see if it works. Well, I got the recoil put back on there and it still doesn't work. So I have one more trick I think I can try. I'm going to pull it back off one more time and then see if we can get it working. Otherwise we might just leave this off, and there is a spot you can wrap a rope around it and pull on it. I just didn't want to have to wrap the rope every time and do that. So I'll pull it off once more and we'll see if we can get it working. So this recoil, in order for these to have friction to move back and forth as you pull, they have these little washers in there, and I think it was supposed to be almost like a gasket material, but it feels like it might have been a type of rubber kind of, but it's just hard as a rock, so it's not getting the friction to twist. So I have an O-ring here. So my camera died on me when I was putting that together, but I slid the O-ring down in there, and then I sandwiched that stuff back in there, and it did all still fit. And it does seem like that we get a little bit more throw out of it now. So I'm hoping that that'll make it catch. If it doesn't, we can either try putting a drill on it to get it to spin over, or I can wrap a rope around it off of the pulley that's on there. But I don't really like putting the drill on them, because when the engine starts, it'll sometimes rip the drill out of your hands, and I don't have like a ratcheting mechanism that I can put on there. If you watch Musty One's channel, he rigged up, it's like a little round ratchet piece with a socket fitting out both ends that he puts in between, and then as it starts, it can kind of free spin, and then he can pull the drill off of it. So I need to rig up something like that if I'm going to keep monkeying with this old stuff that the recoils don't usually work, or they just have a thing you wind a rope on that takes a lot of time to sit and try to get them running. We'll try throwing this back on and see what happens. Well, I got it back on here, and I can get it to catch once in a while. Now, of course, it's not catching. So I guess we're gonna have to wrap a rope around it. I didn't really want to have to do that, but I think that starter cup is just too wore out for it to grab, plus between that and those other pieces being worn, because it looked like somebody had flipped them before. So I'm not sure what else I can do. One other thing that works is if you can change the height of that starter cup, but we do have a little room if I could put something behind it to raise it up a little bit, but being that center's broke out of it now, I can't shim the backside of it up really. So I think we'll just have to wrap a rope around it. I'll pop the recoil back off, and then I want to put that handle back on it. This thing's a lot easier to handle with the handle on it. But yeah, that's quite a groove in that. That's our biggest issue. I'm not sure what I could do about that. If this wasn't aluminum, if it was steel, I'd probably just weld a bead around the inside and then kind of grind it out where it was smooth again. Which that's another thing I could do, is weld a small bead on the ends of these. But I don't know if that would, I suppose it would work, but it'd be hard to get a good bead on there that's not gonna end up flaking off or end up dragging once it's actually off if I do it too thick. So it'd be hard to, it'd be hit or miss whether you had it the right thickness or not. So I guess we'll just try wrapping a rope for now, see if we can get it to fire off. But I am going to put that handle back on so I can got something to hang on to. Kind of got to squish that rubber stuff back in on the bottom. I'm pretty sure we're going to have to go through the carburetor on this. I know for sure they've got the wrong fuel line on here. This fuel line is huge and they just squished it down with clamps, so I'll at least have to replace that. But I am curious just to try it without going through the carburetor, because if this hasn't been run in a lot of years, which I'm guessing it hasn't, if it had old fuel in it, some of that old gas was so much better than the gas we have nowadays that every once in a while it'll really surprise you that the stuff will still run without going through the carburetor. But we'll put the air cleaner back in it too before I try to fire it up. So I've just got a little 2-stroke gas here. I think I got some dribbled in there. And we'll throw the spark plug in it. I won't tighten it for now. I've got a rope. I just tied a snowmobile pull handle to this rope. So we'll wrap that around and see what we get. It's one thing that was actually kind of nice about a lot of this old stuff is how they had a way you could wrap a rope around it if your recoil was broken or anything. Could grab a pair of gloves in case it rips that cord out of my hand or anything. Yep. Yeah, there's a way to lock the throttle. And we'll see if it'll fire off. Well, I didn't get nothing out of that. I don't know if I got enough gas in there or not either, so. Also, I didn't make sure. Yeah, it should spin forward. So maybe I'm spinning it the wrong direction. That'll spin the engine forward. I was wrapping it like this, so I was actually pulling it backwards. So that could be the problem also. It needs to be wrapped like this then. I thought I might have heard something on that one. I guess we'll try the hooking the drill to it and see what we get out of that. And then we'll try it with the drill here. I zipped that nut off of there. I'll have to do it on the other side. So I got flipped around. I'll try running the drill off of the clutch side. See if we can get it to fire that way. Well, it popped. Probably ran out of gas that we poured in there. It was popping though, so that's a good sign. So I think we can go through the carburetor and see if we can get it to fire through that. I'm just gonna put a gas line on it for now. And then we'll see if we can get it to run on its own fuel. I probably will flush that tank out a little bit because there is a bunch of oil in there, so I don't want it to be mixed super rich like that. But at least it fired up. I think it's going to be pretty loud by the sounds of it. But I'll get that gas line changed and then we'll see what it'll do. So I just ran a rag down in the gas tank and soaked up what old gas there was left in there. So now I can throw that gas line on and we'll throw some fresh gas in there and see what happens. I'll tighten this spark plug too. Most of the time it seems the stuff will fire up when the spark plug is loose, and it'll keep running for you, and then you tighten them down, you end up having to take it back out a bunch of times. That's the way it always ends up. I'll give it a shot, see what happens. Well, it fired actually. Could have been just residual gas that we had in there though. It would help if I knew which way was choke. I think I'll take that intake tube here off so I can see which way is choke, if it's up or down. And then we can see if there's any gas getting in that carburetor too. Come off of there. Lost the gasket. The gasket on the carburetor side of it. So down is choke. Looks kind of gunky in there. Does look like we maybe were getting some gas up through it though. So I'll try it again with the lever down. See if we can get it to fire. I'm not gonna try too hard because I think I'm gonna have to go through that carburetor, but thought we might get lucky. Yeah, it doesn't look like we're sucking any fuel at all. That's okay. I kind of figured we'd have to go through the carburetor. So those bolts are buried back in here to get the nuts to get the carburetor off. So instead of fighting with that, I'm gonna take the carb apart with it on the saw. It's not really the way you want to do it, but I could fight with those for a while and probably get them off, but I'm just gonna try it the easier way. So I'm gonna pull this line back off of here and see if we actually did suck any fuel. I'm kind of doubting we did. Well, there's a little bit in there. But I think I'll hose this down with carb clean before we take it off since it's so dirty. But then we'll take it apart and see what those I'm guessing the diaphragms are pretty well shot in there. I got one left I'll do by hand. I don't want everything to fall apart on me. I've kind of got to hold it together in case it'll fall, and it looks like it's pretty well stuck. I got the first plate here. Doesn't look too bad. The diaphragm is actually surprisingly good feeling too. It doesn't feel like it's... These little flappers here are a little bit stiff, but... The main one is your metering diaphragm. That part looks pretty clean too, but it's this part here, which that actually feels like it's pretty pliable. Pulling it off of here, I don't want to wreck it though. Might get something to get underneath that with. Get a little razor blade to go under it with. I don't want to actually cut it off of there, but just to break it free. It is stiffer than I thought it was actually, but it's pretty gunky in there. So there's our diaphragm. It feels pretty pliable actually. Usually they're hard as a rock when you take them off there. But there's a needle in here. I'm kind of wondering if that's stuck. There is a bunch of glue in here too. Kind of hosing it out. I'll have to get something to pinch off that gas line. It's starting to leak. So we've got a couple adjustment screws on the side that I want to take out and blow through. So we have to count the turns. There's some goo in there. It's not letting my... There we go. So it's basically just 1/2 turn is what it was out. The needle in there was a little bit stuck as I was spraying stuff in, and it got to where it can move back and forth. You can see this one is kind of gooey too. It all wipes off pretty easily, but you could see it come out the body of the carb there. This is the high speed. Alright, so I'm going to take the other parts over to the bench, and I do have a rebuild kit for this, so I think I'm just going to throw that in since those diaphragms are kind of questionable. This one is still pliable, but it's a little bit stiff when you go back and forth with it. The new ones will be just like butter going back and forth, so we'll do that and then put it back together. So I'm peeling this first diaphragm off, and it's kind of like it's glued to the plate here, so that was probably part of our issue, is that diaphragm wasn't really moving in the middle there. So I'll have to scrape that clean, and then I'm just gonna run these in the parts washer to get them cleaned up. So I got all this stuff cleaned up in the parts washer, and I started placing our diaphragms on here. The kit comes with, it's a little bit different. It's got a gasket here, and then it's got this piece with the little flappers on it, and then the actual diaphragm. So that's a little bit different from the original one. This was all one piece, the diaphragm and the little stoppers there, and then the gasket was separate. So in that one will go like this, back together, and then these ones we'll have to put on up on the carburetor as we go to put it together, because it goes that one with this knob facing up, and then your gasket spaces it in between, and then we'll put that back on the bottom. So we'll head over to the saw and start putting that back together. So we'll throw our gasket on here first. Let's see. These are always kind of difficult to line up without having the plate here. This is easier to do when you're on the bench. So that one must go something like that. So it would go that way. Kind of just have to line things up as you go. And then we'll get a screw started right when we get it up there. It has those locating pins, but it can be hard to get it to hang off of there when it's... I did some editing on this video already. I know it's getting pretty long, so I'll try to speed this up. We should be on the home stretch now to get this going. I hope it runs after doing this anyway. Alright, I think we're ready to try firing it up. I've got some safety glasses and hearing protection on since this thing is, I know it's going to be loud. I'll lock the throttle a little bit open. Well, it looks like you can only lock it wide open. I don't really want to lock it wide open because it kind of sticks. So we'll just see if it'll start at idle, or I might be able to hit the throttle a little as we're going. Huh. It goes a little bit, but... I'm going to try adjusting that carburetor a little bit. Seems like we're not getting enough fuel. Kind of hard for me to hold the throttle and that at the same time. Well, that was pretty awesome. I love getting these old two-strokes running. You don't see them too often anymore. I used to pick them up at auctions fairly cheap, but now they've gotten to be kind of a collector's item, so they're a little bit harder to find. I have to do a little fine tuning on the carburetor, as it still seemed like it was getting too much gas a lot of the time, so it had a hard time idling, but I did get it to idle finally. And this clutch, I did end up taking this nut off after I ran it, and I cleaned it up a little bit, and I put some grease on that bearing that's in there, but it's still a little bit rusty, but it should clean up once we run it. But I'm gonna run the chain sharpener across the chain once, and then I'll try to clean up this bar a little bit because there's a bunch of rust in there. I'll put some lube in there and try to clean that out, and we can run it outside and find something to try to cut with it. All right, I got the saw out here. I got a tree down here. I cut the limbs off with the Husqvarna 455. I didn't want to have to be manhandling that big thing on all that small stuff, so I left the log here. So we'll see if the saw will actually start with the wrapping a rope around it deal, and then we'll see if it'll cut. Well, that was kind of a fail, but I didn't have high hopes for that chain. I tried sharpening it, but it was so bad it looked like somebody had run it across some concrete or something. There's still some teeth left on there, but the tops of them are just completely wore off, so when you try to sharpen them, it's so thin that as soon as I cut, I think it's just peeling off pieces of the tooth. But the oiler was working. I was still monkey with that carburetor trying to get it quite right. It seemed like it's kind of underpowered, but maybe I can find a different chain for this at some point and we can test it out again. It came loose right away too. There was a lot of rust in all the links and everything, so I'm sure that it all of a sudden stretched out from that. But we got quite a bit done in this video anyway. I'm shocked that it even runs as good as it does. I'll probably have to get that carburetor completely off and get into there, and it might be some orifices that are plugged or something, but it runs. That was the goal anyway. I wish we would have been able to cut a little bit of wood with it, but with that chain like that, I don't think I'll ever get that one sharp. But if you like this sort of thing, like the videos and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.